everybody. Welcome to Ms.Interpretations. My name is Marin, and this is my virtual campfire. And tonight we have John Cohen joining us to chat for a while. Thank you, John, for coming onto my show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for asking me.
Well, it's really awesome. I have to tell you that I kind of uh, quit TikTok for a couple of reasons. One is we weren't sure if it was going away, right? At some point, right? And
Right.
so, but I also had to get to the point where I would only allow myself to go to TikTok on Saturday morning for a couple for a little while because if I tried to go on at night, I was like 3 in the morning, like, what happened to the time? It's kind of crazy. So and that is where you started, yes? For
Yes.
your okay. So if everybody doesn't know, this is John Cohen. His channel is John Cohen Official, and he has a call-in show that he started on TikTok and now streams also to YouTube. And tell us a little bit about how you got started, like with this on TikTok. What got you going on there?
Well, I didn't imagine that this would be what I would be spending my time doing. If you'd asked me even a year ago, suggested that my life would look like this, running basically full time running a YouTube channel and call-in shows and 7 or 8 hour streams a week, I would have thought you had lost your mind. Um, but basically, I wrote a book, and the book is coming out later this year. And so there was a very long window between the publishers who took the book on and the release date. It was about 18 months. So
Oh,
I thought, well,
that
what
long. Okay.
that long? Yeah, I signed my publishing deal in, I think it was July last year. It might even have been June. I can't remember, June or July.
Had you already written the book?
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
finished it. So it wasn't like I signed a deal to go off and write it. I
Yeah.
had it ready to go pretty much. It had a tiny bit of, it had still some editing to go, but it was
Yeah.
written. I'd finished it.
So
And
they call that over the transom, right? Or you toss it over the transom. Do you know that
it's not
publishing
a phrase, not a phrase
term?
I hear, but I know a lot of people get commissioned to write a book, or they'll sell a proposal in to a
Right.
publisher, and then they have to go and write the book. I mean, to me, that's not completely unfamiliar because I worked in the music industry for many years, and that's kind of how a lot of those deals were done. Where I'd be commissioned to do something, and the paperwork would all be done, and then I'd go off and do it. This wasn't really like that, and so I had this 18-month window between signing the publishing deal and the book coming out. And I just thought, well, what am I going to do for 18 months? I've got to do something with this time. So I made a little website about the book, and I experimented and made a couple of videos to put on the website. And then I thought, I put an email list on there, and I thought, how am I going to get people to come to my little website? One of a trillion in the world, right? They're not gonna just stumble across it. And I thought, well, I have to do the kind of social media thing, which was not something I'd been involved with at all
Yeah.
before. So I just started making videos on TikTok, with the idea being try to generate some interest around the stuff I'm speaking and writing about, and then direct people to my little website for my book and get them on the email list so I can say to the publishers, look, I collected some names of people who might be interested in the book. And so I started religiously making a TikTok video every day, and this went on for many months. And then I became aware that people in the kind of religion and belief space on TikToks, some of them have interactive live streams where they can engage with people. So
Right.
I started doing that, and that started to get some traction. And sometimes it would just be conversations with ex-believers or non-believers about the stuff that we find interesting. But it started to become a bit more interactive, and believers would call in, and it started to sort of take on a debate format. And there are other people who do this really, really well, and I kind of followed in their footsteps, I guess. And I I was amazed because I noticed a kind of community forming around the videos and the live streams, and the same people would be coming back and starting to know each other. And I really enjoyed the sense of community building,
Right.
and it was a natural step to move onto YouTube as well, which is a very, very different platform to
Yeah.
TikTok. It's a really, really different, and in lots of ways,
How
right?
long were you on TikTok before you reached out and did YouTube?
I was still posting shorts to YouTube, but they weren't really getting any traction. They were, I mean, it was really, really hard work to the point that I almost gave up. I couldn't understand how it was going to work because I was posting videos nearly every day and they'd get like 10 views or 20 views. And I was on, I think it took months and months and months for my subscribers to reach 100. And I was like, how does anyone make it on this platform? And then something happened, which was, do you know who Darth Dawkins is?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
so Darth Dawkins came into my live stream and it didn't go
Mm.
well for him at all. And he had a bad day
Oh,
on
was
my
live stream so you don't have it recorded, eh?
yeah. It was no, I mean it was still recording, but it was live, right? And he came in and it went badly for him. And so I posted it up on YouTube, and that was a kind of inflection point that sort of started things rolling really. And then the other thing was the dual streaming. It took me a while to figure out kind of the tech to get the dual streaming working, to be able to, you know, push the stream out to both platforms at once, take guests
Right.
from both platforms at once. It was a bit of working out to get that running properly. And then that plus the Darth Dawkins thing, it just started to snowball. And I guess that was around, when was that? Maybe around the beginning of the year or something, it really started to move on YouTube. And yeah, I mean, YouTube's kind of in some ways my main focus now. It's just
Mm.
feels much more robust.
Yeah. So you started with shorts and then you started doing lives on TikTok and then you added the YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So how long were you doing lives on TikTok before you went over to YouTube or added YouTube?
I
Do you
mean, a
know?
few months,
Just a few months,
but
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But in the early days, I'd do a live and there'd be 20 people there, or even less. I remember my first live, I had 8 people there. I was like, okay, 8 people, it's better than no people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was all right, and it was growing, but slowly. But really, it was YouTube was where it started to really grow, and the YouTube audience is far more engaged. I mean, if you have, I remember watching the analytics and the number of people in my live streams on TikTok when I had 8,000 followers on TikTok didn't really change when I had
Mm.
15,000 followers on TikTok. It just seemed weird,
Ah,
which just
yeah.
suggests to me that the audience is broad and shallow. Not the people are shallow, but the engagement is shallow.
Right.
Whereas I think people subscribing on YouTube seems to be just psychologically a more significant move somehow. And they're a more engaged audience, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
different. It works differently.
Yeah, and the community is a little different as well because I mean the a number of folks have found me here just because of the YouTube community. They, it's like we watch a lot of the same shows, especially in the evening. So, I've met people in the chat, and then I met them in real life. So it's kind
Yeah.
of interesting how that's worked out, and it's been really great, especially as you know, as far as the community. There's a lot of folks who don't know any other non-believers, any other atheists. Um, I I know one here that I know of. I mean, a lot of people probably may not believe in God, but I'm in the Bible Belt of the South here, so it's
Yeah.
not like it's very odd. We're an odd group, so it's very interesting to actually find a community where you can kind of talk about these things, especially. Um, I always say I deconstructed decades before I deconverted, right? So
That's interesting.
yeah, I went to grad school, master's in theological studies, and then um, grad school for religion and ethics. And I, so I had to kind of deconstruct a little bit like deconstruction zone, Justin, right? While studying it, I just wanted to learn, more about Christianity. I wanted to know more. I wanted to be a better Christian. I wanted to understand it better, and
Wow.
so that's the reason that I did that. And I grew up Methodist, so I was, was pretty liberal Christian. So it's very easy to explain a lot of things away, right? It wasn't like, oh, if one little thing broke, then the whole thing came crashing down. That's, you know,
Yeah,
it's just like,
yeah.
we'll just put a little band-aid on this and a little band-aid on that, and a little band, until finally, it's all band-aid, right? And it's not anything else. So, yeah. So let it so tell us a little bit more then about your experience of, like, the difference. You said the communities are different, where your response is different, where the people that came in, and I guess people still come in and talk to you from the TikTok side as well
Oh
as the
yeah.
YouTube
Oh,
side, right?
completely. I,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I hugely value both communities, and actually, a good friend of mine, called T or Tracy, built a Discord, and that's where the two kind of streams can cross and mix, and that's quite interesting. And there are fantastic people on both sides. I mean, I've made incredible friends on TikTok, people who I absolutely adore, and amazing people. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that the types of people are different. It's more when you
Just
kind of generalize it out. If you look at it at a kind of 10 or 20,000 foot level, 1,000 followers on TikTok equates to a certain level of reliable engagement, and 1,000 subscribers on YouTube equates to a different level of reliable
okay, I see
engagement.
what you
That
mean.
that
Okay.
was what I found. So, for example, when my subscriber numbers on YouTube were a quarter of the follower numbers on TikTok, there would still be twice as many people from YouTube in the live streams.
Mm,
It's just a
gotcha.
different type of thing.
Yeah.
But there are, fantastic people in the community, and I learn from them. I mean, I'm this is not false modesty. I'm humbled by the brains that are
Seriously.
around. I mean, it's frightening sometimes, because I'm on there and like I'm debating and I'm talking and I'm trying to represent and I'm trying to do a good job of, holding these crazy religious views to account for their
Yeah.
implications, and trying to kind of steer that ship. And I'm looking over at the comment section, and there are people making points like super smart, super quick. I'm like, damn, why didn't I think of that? And it's humbling. It's
Yeah.
humbling. And I know there are smarter people than me watching me do this, which
Right.
is good in a way, because you want to raise your game, right? You don't want to be complacent about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, there's like, I I know a lot of different subjects, but maybe not necessarily a ton of a ton about that. But there's a lot of folks who are just amazing, that have just done deep dives in many different subjects. And that's one of the things that I got over kind of quickly. It's like, if I didn't know something, I'm like, or I couldn't remember somebody's name or something, I'm like, chat, help me out, because it's the smartest chat on the internet.
It
These
is. It
um,
is.
communities that follow. So it's really fun. So this is a new friend in the chat for me, but this is Kif Webb is one of
Kif,
your.
Kif is wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Kif was my
So
first mod on the TikTok side. Super awesome. Hey,
that's
Kif.
great. There you
Yeah.
go. So um well, I let's talk about your book then, because uh one of the reasons that I really enjoy watching you is the ideas that you have put together so succinctly, about how we come to what we believe, and how those beliefs can change, but why they do. And so you want to start off with your book jacket and tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. So the book is called Unconvinced: How Belief is Not a Choice and Why That Changes Everything. And the genesis of the book was a debate I was having on Twitter back in the day when Twitter wasn't a complete cesspool. I used to spend a lot of time on there debating with around theology and philosophy and belief and all of this stuff.
Right.
And I remember one day being in the thick of it with a believer, and he said to me, just make the decision to just accept Jesus. He said, just decide, try it, just decide to accept Jesus. And I contemplated what he was saying, and I realized in that moment it was really quite an epiphany. I realized that it wasn't that I didn't want to, it was that I was unable to. And I
Right.
realized that it wouldn't matter what the stakes were, it wouldn't matter how dangerous it might be for me to not hold that belief. I was incapable of holding it. It wasn't an unwillingness, it was an inability. And I
Yeah.
reflected on that and I thought, I wonder if any of my other beliefs also fall into that category of not being able to believe them rather than not wanting to believe them.
Hmm.
And I self examined for a moment and I realized, oh, they all do. This applies to all my beliefs. And then I turned my lens outwards and I thought, I wonder if this is just me or if all people are like this. And I
Mm.
started to look into um, just not at a very deep level, but broadly, what do we know about how beliefs form? And what do we know about the process of forming belief? And I realized through doing that, and also just through thinking about it a little bit, this is universal. This applies to everyone.
Right.
Nobody can just decide to believe something. You can only believe something if your brain is persuaded or convinced that it's true or likely true. Because if that's not the case, what does it mean to say you believe it? What would it mean to say this thing that I'm not convinced is true? I believe it. We know that that's not true.
Right.
So it's not possible, right? It's a contradiction. So the question then was, okay, I accept that belief is something that happens to you when you're convinced about something. If you're not convinced about something, belief is not possible. The next question was, can you just decide to be convinced about something? And I realized two things. The first is that you can't. And the second is that all the major religions pretend that you can. This is a charade. This is a game that they play where belief is framed as a voluntary action that you can just take, you just decide, just do it, just believe in Jesus, just believe in Muhammad. But it
Yeah.
doesn't work like that, because if your brain hasn't been convinced, and by convinced, I don't mean certain, we could accept propositions all the time without certainty. But
Right.
if your brain is not persuaded that this thing is true or likely to be true, you cannot believe it unless something changes that. And so I felt compelled to kind of make and dive into that really and
Right.
solidify it, and then it's a very short step to make a moral argument and say, well, then if any religious system criminalizes non-belief or punishes it, they're punishing people for things that they couldn't do differently,
Yeah.
and that can't be moral, it can't be right. And that was the genesis of the book, no pun intended.
Takes me a second sometimes. um, yeah, I think that one of the things that helped me understand your what you're saying, because growing up as a believer, it's it's just part of the way people talk, at least in Christianity and others as other religions as well. But you know, my that's my experience of you know, accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, right? So that's like a decision that you make. So
Yeah,
so that decision, you know, is like, you know, believe, have faith, right? So it's framed that it's a choice, right? Um, but when you talk about, we don't choose what we find funny, and we
yeah,
don't choose what scares us,
yeah,
right? It just happens to us. And in the same way, belief can happens to us, right? um
exactly.
yeah, yeah. So it's interesting because fear and humor and laughing is intrinsically connected, actually, right? Because I did improv for a while, but and studied about some comedy and stuff, but also, you know, our other ape family members uh
Yeah,
also laugh, right? Chimpanzees, or you know, right? And it's a the laughing is a release of tension around something that you thought might have been dangerous. So one of the things that that makes humor funny, one of the things, it's not always, but one of the things that makes humor funny is that it's like pushing a boundary or doing something like twisted, you know, you suddenly get a twist into something and it's a little bit like off and it's like, oh my gosh. Or you know, when people embarrass themselves, right? And so I'm not describing this very clearly, but the point is like the classic slipping on a banana peel, right? Or, and the America's Funniest Home Videos, you know, when people do things that like they might they might really hurt themselves, but then they don't, and then we find that funny. That's a bit of a release on getting close to something that might be dangerous, but then the way that we release that stress is laughing. So it's kind of interesting
Yeah.
that those kinds of things those are connected.
The
So
reason the reason I talk about humor and fear in this context is not to say belief is the same as humor and fear, but it's to illustrate that it's uncontroversial that things happen to our minds that we don't choose. The point is that
right,
nobody chooses to find something funny. You
right,
just discover that you find it amusing. You become aware. It's something you learn about yourself in the moment. You find yourself feeling the experience of finding something funny.
right,
Nobody sits and says, shall I find this amusing? Yeah, I'm going to. No, actually, I won't. That's not a thing that ever happens. And
yeah,
nobody ever chooses to feel fear either. You may choose to put yourself in a position which is frightening. That's a totally different thing. You can go on the roller coaster or watch the scary movie or whatever it is. But
right,
you don't decide whether you're going to find it frightening or not. You discover whether you find it frightening or not. And these things are not controversial. So all I'm
right,
saying is belief is another one of these. It's a
yes,
cognitive thing that happens to your mind. It's not a thing that you choose to do. It's an experience or more like a perception that
right,
happens to you. And the subtlety here, and where people primarily push back against this, is that they're aware that there are choices you can take around belief, which can cause belief to change. So an
hmm,
example would be if you go to therapy, for example, you are choosing to go to therapy. You're choosing to engage with someone whose job it is to change what you think is true about yourself. So you're actively trying to do that. And the
right,
therapist is trying to get you to perhaps see yourself differently. Maybe you have low self esteem. And the therapist is trying to say, try to sort of will you into believing different things about yourself than you may have believed before. And
yeah,
the point is, there is room for free will in all of that because you're choosing your inputs and you're choosing what you're willing to engage with. What you don't get to choose is whether you find those statements about yourself to be convincing or not. That's something you discover. And that's why therapy sometimes works when you are capable eventually of becoming persuaded by those statements. If your inputs are consistent enough, you are worth it, you're not worthless, you have value,
right,
all of those kind of positive things, your brain is either going to accept them or it isn't. And you
right,
you, you figure it out along the way. You find out whether your brain has accepted them, and if it has, then you experience the sensation of going, you know what, I used to think I was worth less, but I think about things differently now. What that means is I've been persuaded. It
hmm,
doesn't simply mean I chose to, because lots of people can choose to and fail. They can
right,
try to change their self perception or their phobia of heights or their whatever it might be, and then discover that wanting to alone doesn't do it. So when people argue against this notion of belief being involuntary, the argument always hides in the space where the choices still live, which is you chose what to pay attention to, you chose what books to read, you chose to go to the prayer group, you chose to affiliate with a certain group of people. And as a result of doing all of those things, it happens to be the case that your beliefs then changed later.
hmm,
But there are lots of people who choose to do all of those things and the beliefs don't change. So the actual decision is located upstream of the belief.
yes, yes. I mean, for example, what I was discussing before is I chose to learn more. right, about Christianity
Right.
and how to apply that, in ethics in my life and teach other people about that and but I yeah, so and then it's only a few years ago I started to go, I haven't I taught science for a while because that was my undergrad degree, and so I was away from studying religion. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to start studying it again. And when I did, that's when I was like, oh wait a minute. Now I find myself unconvinced. And yeah, so I think that you have a co-host, Sean,
Yeah.
who talks about this a lot. And the first person I heard talk about this was Paula Gia, about
Sure.
the right the okay, what's the phrase now? It's leaving my brain.
Non-resistant non-believers.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking start with you, but that's unconvinced. Yeah, non-resistant non-believer, and that is a thing. It's like folks who really don't want to lose their faith or walk away from it and can't help but they're just not convinced anymore. So it's like you say, it's like, oh, I really, really want to believe in Santa Claus, but I just can't. It's
And this is powerful evidence against the nonsense we hear from believers who say, well, all non-believers are just prideful and want to live in, they don't, not ready to give up their sin, and they want to be their own gods, and
yeah,
they've got hardened hearts and all of this stuff. This is not my experience. I mean, I've never been a believer, but I speak to many, I mean, many, many hundreds of ex-believers. And I think I have a good sense of what that process of losing religion involves, just from the people I've spoken to. And in fact, my next book is about that. My
yeah,
next book is about deconstruction and people who have lost their faith, and how that ties into their sense of their own identity, and both within the group and individually. And the one thing I hear time and time again is how painful it was to lose it. What a sense of loss. What a sense of almost bereavement to be separated from this thing that may have been central to their lives for so many years.
yeah,
And I find it curiously lacking in compassion that believers are so ready to just essentially morally throw all of those people under the bus, and completely fail to acknowledge how painful it was for so many to go through that. It's like having something precious ripped away from them, and how hard people fight to hold on to it. Sean, who you mentioned, my co-host, um, he's a ferocious mind. He's an absolutely amazing
yeah,
guy, brilliant. He didn't want to lose his faith.
yeah,
He fought quite hard to hold on to it, but he's got integrity and honesty, and he wasn't prepared to lie to himself anymore. And so he had to kind of eventually admit to himself, okay, I don't believe this stuff. But he didn't want to. It was painful for him. And
yeah,
I don't think that believers are sufficiently compassionate about this. You can see why, of course.
yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, it's understandable. Uh, but I'm hoping that you and me and others can help believers with that, especially that, for example, I just told a really good friend of mine, that I really don't believe anymore, and we used to pray together and talk a lot about our faith, and uh she was very kind and listening and everything, but then she couldn't leave the conversation without talking to me about Revelation, and that, if I don't believe, then
That lake
and
of fire is waiting for you.
exactly. And I'm
Yeah,
like, really? Wow. So and my response was, I understand. And I understand why you're saying this. And honestly, uh, you know, it'd be a little odd for me if you didn't say this because I
yeah.
know what kind of believer, that she is. Um, but I think it was that, and I have to go back to it. Maybe on my trip, I will go back to writing this song about will heaven be heaven without me? Because, so many of my friends, and mostly my friends, my family, you know, we don't really talk a lot about our faith, but so many friends that, like, can you really enjoy heaven knowing some of your good friends are burning forever? Like, how can that
Be,
be
being
heaven to you?
being burnt forever by the guy that you're up there worshiping every day as well.
Yeah.
It's so twisted. We have a wonderful, relatively new member in our community called Buzz. He's an amazing guy, absolutely fantastic guy. He came
Yeah.
in not that long ago, and he tragically had lost his daughter a few years
Mm,
ago, and we were talking about this is actually in the context of a discussion with a believer, but we're talking about the idea that so the daughter could be up in heaven, right? But Buzz is not a believer. So this
mm,
is now condemning the daughter to an eternity in heaven without her father, without being able to see her father again. So she's being punished
yeah.
for the idea that Buzz can't contort himself into psychologically impossible positions by demanding his mind to accept something he's not convinced is true. No one can do that, by the way. No one can
Right.
do it.
Right.
And
Right.
and, and it's so cruel that there's such a cruelty in that doctrine that it's not just the person who, under this ridiculous system, is being consigned to the fiery burning lakes of sulfur warned about in Revelation. It's
Right.
it's as you say, the people who are supposed to be in heaven, and then we hear, well, there's no tears in heaven, right? No one's suffering. No one's sad. So what? Are they going to wipe your memory? Are they going to give you some kind of mind altering procedure that makes you no longer care about the people who raised you as a child and loved you and gave you the most? Are you just not going to? Are you just going to be totally fine about that
Yeah.
they're currently being tortured elsewhere? It's such a
And
strange
if so, how are
thing.
you still you?
What would it mean to be you if you no longer cared about the people you loved the most? It's
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's horrible. It's horrible.
It's fascinating though, just because the idea is so ingrained in me. Still a favorite song I sometimes that goes around in my head is uh oh I Uncloudy Day is the I don't know, is oh the land of cloudless days. Oh, the land of an uncloudy sky. They tell me of home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, the land of an uncloudy day. I mean, it's like I grew up listening to bluegrass and all of that, and this song, and like that's the promise. I mean, it's when we're going through really hard times, right? It's such a helpful thing. So it's a really positive, memory for me. But still, how how does that work? It doesn't
It it
doesn't make
doesn't work.
sense. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So yeah, there's so much to object to here. There's so
Yeah.
much to the other thing I object to is just this concept of, I mean, to get a little bit theological for a moment, I had another sort of epiphany a few months ago, which was if I really am a sinner and I deserve hell because I have a sinful nature, well, then justice would demand that that's the punishment I receive. And I wouldn't feel okay about an innocent person being punished for my crime, right? So
Right.
if it is the case that I am genuinely deserving of this punishment, well, my personal preference then would be I'll take the punishment. I don't give consent for an innocent third party to be hurt in any way because of my mistakes and
Right.
and, and wrongdoing. And yet my consent is never sought. And I thought, imagine a scenario on earth. Imagine you've done some crime and you're in court and you're about to be sentenced for your crime. It's a serious crime. You're about to be sentenced, and then someone comes in and says, Your Honor, don't sentence him yet because we've found an innocent person who you can sentence instead. And they drag in an innocent person, and the judge goes, Oh, okay, yeah, well, we'll send this guy to jail instead. I, I would like to think that I would say, you know what, I'll do my time.
Yeah.
I'll take what's coming to me because my moral conscience wouldn't allow me to accept that kind of thing. And I
Right.
think it's disgusting. I couldn't live with myself.
Yeah.
as they dragged him off to the dungeons.
Yeah.
Well, would I be happy
Even
about
if he
that?
went willingly, right? You'd still be like, wait a minute, this is what?
Not okay.
Yeah.
Not okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's
yep.
very, very odd. It's interesting that before I have only really deconverted maybe a year and a half ago. Um, and uh, I was watching Mormon stories and Mormon discussions, you know, along before that. I don't know if you are familiar at all with Mormon stories, but John DeLynn has been 20 years interviewing people
Yeah.
just about their Mormon life, but it's become more and more their leaving Mormonism or Church of Latter-day Saints. The whole thing. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But but the uh, just the levels of the different heavens that are available in Mormon beliefs, and why it is so distressing for families if somebody leaves them being a Mormon. Why they leave, because they're not going to have their family in heaven, because that's like something that they're promised, as far as like having the whole family, and or they're going to be in a different level or whatever. And so it's just, so I listened to that for a year or two before coming and going, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this is part of my faith as well, right? This is like, wait, this is part of this as well. So it's just seems to be so odd, I guess, now to me. It didn't. And that's isn't that fascinating though? Like, if you didn't grow up a believer, it
Yeah.
might be difficult, right, for you to understand why so many people can have such horrific beliefs just because they're unexamined, right? Look they're not looked at. And I think that's kind of fascinating that some people just won't, look at their beliefs. They don't think about, this is kind of odd. I mean, I remember being as a kid in church going, how can God listen to all of these people at the same time? Right? Because everybody's in church at the same time, right? And
Yeah.
so and
Yeah.
so like, again, God is here, God is here, God is here. Well, God's in all the other churches too. Like that didn't that didn't that didn't make sense to me, but I didn't think about it too much, right? And so, but it's just so easy. I think one thing that along with that, is kind of a question that I wanted to get your thoughts on, and that is, um, and I've trained as a life coach, a horse coach, us actually using horses to kind of help people understand themselves better. And one of the things that has come out of that for me is understanding that my summary of humans is that we want to feel better. We generally want to feel better, and we don't want to die. And probably in the other order, that we don't want to die, and we also want to just want to feel better. And just we do things just like when we find things that are funny, like we have reactions to things. And I also talk about how our brain just doesn't really understand time, the way our whole brain doesn't, right? Our frontal lobes hopefully have a little bit of a sense of time, but like coming across a situation where that has been dangerous for you in the past but might not be dangerous for you now,
Mm.
the brain doesn't always see that. It just thinks, this has hurt me in the past, so I have to run, or I have to fight, or and so sometimes, it's just a framework for me to kind of understand myself better. Like, so, and I have a little bit better ability now, and I try to help other people have this ability, that if you have a really strong feeling about something, it's probably just information and not necessarily the truth about what's happening in front of you at the moment. It's like, I'm having a really strong feeling about this.
Mm.
Wonder what's really going on, because there are times where, you know, I'm like bumping along and this kind of thing has happened and I don't get upset, but now I'm really, really upset. So, we can't necessarily choose what we get upset about, right? Or what makes us angry as well. So, like taking a look at that. And usually for me, I can always go back to, somehow my brain is telling me, you're gonna die. and,
Yeah, yeah.
and so you must protect yourself, you know? So, and so I have to, it's almost as if I have to tell that part of my brain, hey, thank you for the warning, and I'll probably need you in the future for something, but right now, this is not what's happening, right? It's something
Love that.
else. It's
I love
something
that
else.
dialogue. Yeah, I think that's excellent, and that's of course the essence of mindfulness is stepping outside of your thoughts and being able to sort of see them in a more accepting way and go, oh, I'm feeling sad. That sadness is happening. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
I am sad. It's just sadness is happening right now, and to be more accepting of that and realize it, there will be a point where sadness isn't happening, and you're going to survive, and you're going to be okay. But it's so easy to get lost in those moments, and those mechanisms in the brain that are supposed to kick in to keep you alive are very old. Evolution did an excellent job of selecting for our ancestors that had those mechanisms and weeding out the ones that didn't, right? They didn't
right,
survive because they didn't know to run away from the tigers or the whatever,
right,
and so we're stuck
right.
with it. That those fight or flight systems, and all of that, like the central nervous activate system activation responses, they're pretty hard coded into us. But I think that the process you describe of being able to have some awareness of them and go, oh, okay, I see what this is. This is that stuff
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
is really,
exactly.
really, really helpful, and actually really, really helpful for people who are on their way out of high control religious systems where so much of it is to do with relying on that, right? Fear of
Right.
hell,
Fear of
fear of
hell.
rejection, fear of
Mm-hmm.
shame, fear of being deemed to be not good enough, fear of being wrong because you thought about things too much and didn't just take
Yeah.
them on faith, right? All of this, the veneration of accepting things on faith,
Mm-hmm.
that's not virtuous to me, but it's framed as being virtuous. Just have the
Right.
faith, all of these things, and then the fear kicks in, and this is by design. The fear kicks in to bring you back into the fold, to bring you
Right.
back in line with the doctrine, and people feel that fear. And so being able to take a step outside, like you described you do, and kind of negotiate with it and go, oh, I see what this is. This is that old fear thing that I used to
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
feel. That's a really powerful tool for people, who are in that space where maybe intellectually they've realized the religion isn't true, but
Yeah.
the fear and the emotions and the complex stuff is often the last thing to go. They
Yeah.
still have nightmares about hell or moments of feeling anxious, or what if I've got it wrong, or all of that. That's a
Right.
moment to do exactly what you said and go, I recognize this.
Right.
This is that old stuff that's been around for years and years and
Yeah.
years, and it's
Yeah.
going to take a while to go, and it may never fully go, but
Right.
we can deal with this. I think that's a really lovely way that you framed it.
Yeah. And to be compassionate to yourself and to other people about that, right? That
Yeah.
that it helps me not, you know, get upset when as easily when other people around me get upset, right? And or they're mad at me for something.
Mm.
And rather than just like fighting right back, it's like, something in their brain is saying, I'm gonna die. And so and like it helps like have that kind of compassion, or like, okay, so what does this person really need? Because but it's taken years of that process of and actively working on that, because like many people growing up in a faith, I wanted to be a good person. I still want to be a good person, and if you accuse me of not being a good person, then that's when I start having I'm gonna die kind of feeling. So it can be a very complex kind of thing, but like you say, with so many people who have grown up with this very strong fear of hell. And also, who are you to try and be God, be your own God? You're trying to be your own God, you know? And it's like, no, that's not, that's not what it is. It's like, where is God? So it's a lot of complex feelings about it. And it does take time. And I just, I know a lot of folks have said, I can't believe I believed for so long, and I really hope that they start to have more compassion for themselves. Like, of
For
course you
sure.
believed for a very long time. This was exactly what your human brain was, designed to do.
Especially if those beliefs came in childhood. I mean,
Yeah,
child brains are shaped by evolution to believe what their
yeah,
primary caregivers tell them. Again, we can look to the history of human beings and our ancestors 200,000 years ago on the savannas of Africa. The child brains who believed their parents when they said, "Don't go that near there; it's dangerous." Stay away from the cliff edge, or these are the
right,
berries are dangerous, or those children who had that instinct would have been differentially selected for and had higher reproductive success than the children whose brains were not so inclined. So believing what your parents tell you is adaptive from an evolutionary point of view, which is why children are gullible. It's why they're easily programmed, and these things that are told to children early in their lives are extremely difficult to shift. It takes a lot of work to do that, and you're right. People should never feel guilty or ashamed, or that they feel bad for having accepted things that the people they trust most in the world told them in the
yeah,
formative years of their lives. It's
yeah,
it's it's sad. I'm planning on doing a live stream soon, specifically on the subject of indoctrinating children, because I do think it's uniquely, I'm going to use this word advisedly, I do think it's uniquely evil. I think
yeah,
it's taking people at the most vulnerable point in their lives, where really they're relying on you to equip them to deal with life, and you don't equip them to deal with life when you tell them essentially there are monsters under the bed, when you tell
right,
them a man 2,000 years ago in the Middle East died and somehow it's partly their fault on
yeah,
some level,
yeah,
um, and that if they don't believe the right things, they're going to get set on fire after they die. I think
yeah.
it's unforgivable to tell children that.
And I think that God is with you. God is basically watching you like all the time, right? And I think that is like, and one of the things that has just like actually helped my nervous system calm down over the couple of years. It's like I'm not always on. I'm not always wondering. I'm not always thinking about, what does God think about this, right? That is
Mm,
so insidious. And
horrific.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Constant invigilation, not just of what you do, but of what you think as well.
yeah.
I think it was Christopher Hitchens, I think, called it a celestial North Korea. Like
Mm,
constant surveillance all day long of everything you do in your most private moments. You're not actually in private. What a
right.
horrible way to live.
It's like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's wow, someone say hi. Is that Aaron?
And hello back. I have to say I made the mistake of not signing into the chat on the interface here, so I can't post any messages back to anyone, but I am seeing them. So hi
Oh,
to
okay.
Babs. Hi to
Okay.
Babs. Babs, I'm heartbroken to read your backstory there. I didn't know that you had suffered such a loss. I'm so sorry to read that. But hi to Babs, and hi to Aharon as well, and Pastor Fairy. There's lots of
Yeah.
wonderful people. Gordon is here. Kip, of course. Um, yeah, this
Yeah.
is why I feel so privileged to have such an amazing community of people, and so incredible that they just turn
Yeah.
up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Josh, insidious is a great word for it. Yeah. The idea that that God is watching all the time, and it's like
Horrific.
it's super Santa Claus, right? It's
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but especially I I think also with anybody who might be neurodivergent, especially ADHD, where, well, or autistic, because for one of the things that the reasons I never liked the name ADHD or ADD because it's disorder, right? Is in the name, and I just think it's I always called it a discrimination difference, that
Mm.
people put their attention on something different. They don't discriminate, like what how they discriminate what should be paid attention to is different than what
Yeah.
other people do. And a lot of that actually is social stuff, like always worrying about whether people actually like you or they're getting you or whatever, it's and that can
Mm.
be very distracting. And I was a high school teacher for a long time, and that is it's just it's distressing, right, for students that are worried about somebody bullying them, or somebody laughing at them, or when they're just having a joke. But that's the and so it's distracting. You can't really learn, but the nervous system is kind of like always on. So I feel like that is you know part of that. So and then with folks who are autistic, uh not always having the same social cues and understanding the same social cues as
Yeah.
others who are not on the spectrum, and then being concerned about whether or not they're coming across okay. And yeah, so it's kind of it's kind so it's not like their nervous system's already kind of under stress just being a human in the world, right? But then
Right.
also to have on top of that the theology of you're always being watched and whether you're doing something right or wrong, or and the
Yeah. Right.
vigilance about that is exhausting.
What a thing to have to constantly manage. And then the other one that we can't forget, of course, is belonging to the group is such a fundamental survival need.
Right.
So our brains are also hard coded by evolution to predispose us towards behavior which minimizes the chances of being excluded from the group,
Right.
because excluded from the group used to mean you're dead, you're not going
Right,
to
exactly.
survive.
Exile was death. Yeah.
Was death. And so there are these cleverly designed. Have you ever seen like these social experiments where they set up scenarios where everyone's in on it apart from one person, and to see how people will behave. So my favorite one is um, everyone in the lift that stands facing the wrong way,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then the mark, right, the person who's the subject of the experiment will gets in the lift too, and in most cases they won't be the only one who stands facing the door. They just can't do it, so they too will turn, and with for absolutely no reason at all, will face the back wall of the lift because everyone else is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody wants to be excluded from the
Right.
safety of the school of fish you happen to be swimming in. And
Yeah.
so that it causes as well um, a very strong kind of gravitational pull back into religious systems, because you don't want to be the outsider who then sacrifices the security of the group by saying I don't believe this stuff anymore.
Right.
Very, very powerful stuff, which is why I have so much respect for people who have had the intellectual courage to be that fish outside of the rest of the school and swim in a different direction, out
Yeah.
on your own in many cases.
Right.
um, People who have been on that journey, I haven't been on that, but people like you, people like Sean, people like that have my utmost respect for the bravery and the intellectual honesty in doing that when it feels like it could be so costly, and in many cases it is costly.
It is, yeah, for so many, in so many ways. Uh, the you talk about it being bravery, but if you also look at it from your perspective of being unconvinced, it's like I didn't really have a choice. I didn't really have a
No.
choice either. It's like I just gotta keep moving
Yeah.
forward. And if I had a choice, I would have chosen differently, right? I mean, I have lost
Yeah.
a lot since I have deconverted. And so it's and relationships and especially. And it's like, dang. Okay. There he is. Come on. He walked around and now coming back.
Oh, that's your
That's my
dog.
yeah, you go downstairs and ask Pops because I'm busy. He wants to go outside.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh man.
I mean, to clarify something, you didn't have a choice in terms of what you believed, right? Because at the point where you stopped finding the stuff convincing because of what you'd
Yeah.
learned and because you'd just the journey you'd been on, you didn't have a choice to believe, but you did have a choice about whether to be honest about that and or
Mm,
whether to continue to essentially role play belief
mm.
for the sake of an easier life and staying in the group and not breaking stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that I really admire are people like you who just have the bravery to say I'm not going to be inauthentic. I'm going to be authentic
Yeah.
about this. And it I have so much sympathy for people who don't feel they can make that break, and
Yeah.
so they live a life of inauthenticity where they exist within belief structures they don't hold anymore, and that's exhausting. Having to constantly role play that
It is.
is,
I actually did that for a long time. Like
I'm
I
sure
said,
you did.
deconstructing and not deconverting, right?
Yeah,
And I would sit in church and go, yeah. Well, metaphorically, that may be true, and you know, the yeah, I can kind of see that on a poetic kind of level, right? And I would just, just deal with things, but yeah, as I've described before, I kept when we say the creed, I kept saying less and less of it until it was finally, I believe in God was the first thing that you say, right? And I was like, I can't say any of this anymore. Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
So,
Oh, Niddy's in the house. Hey, Niddy.
Nitty, hello,
Yeah.
good to see you. So, somebody said something I wanted to put up here, but now I can't find it. All right. Oh yeah, yeah. This is it. Ah, this is it. The love I felt from this community. Aw.
Yeah, Babs is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big
And
love, Babs.
yeah, I mean, life is hard, and getting through it together, it's it's a thing. We do need each other, and we just basically have to find our tribe. Um, and sometimes it's a virtual. I talk about this as my virtual campfire. This is because I studied some anthropology, and we grew up around the campfire. We grew up, meaning humans throughout the many, many, many generations have grown up sitting around the campfire telling stories,
Mm.
and explaining the world, to each other. And so this is this is why I call it the campfire.
I like that. No, I
So
like that. And I think that these virtual communities where people are spread all around the world and we convene online all from our own homes, some people will say, well, that's not the same as a community where you're all together in one place and you can help each other practically with things, and
right,
you can give each other a hug and all of the kind of the full fat version of that. And I grant it's not the same, but it's worth a hell of a lot more than nothing. And it it really is meaningful. I think the fact that we can have these communities and identify with each other and bring together people who have who recognize themselves in each other and understand what it means to come out of religion and
all right,
all of that. I think it really means a lot, and I feel really, really good seeing it happen. I think it's
yeah,
fantastic. You're doing it. People. Justin's got an incredible community. I'm all for this. I'm all for these communities building and
yeah,
people fellowshipping and getting round the campfire, as you so beautifully put
yeah.
it. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic.
Nobody in my family ever understood me anyway, so I'm always been the 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 odd one. But I mean, we get along. It's just like, and it used to really hurt my feelings, but now it's like, yeah, just it's a quirk. That's what we say now. That's just one of her quirks. It
Oh
also
wow.
helps everybody like accept each other a little better too. So yeah, CJ Cornthwaite, he is an amazing creator. Put out a really good video today about finding a sense of belonging. So everybody should go watch that. I will too.
Ah,
So
I've not heard of that. I
yeah,
will. need to check that out.
Yeah, yeah. So it has been. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, what? Sorry. See, community. Justin has been reading Hebrew with
Awesome.
you. So that was this week. Okay, cool, cool. Nice. All right.
Yeah.
So, oh man, there was something else I was gonna ask you about. So you are starting this new book, even though tell us when your book is coming out. It's coming out September, is that right?
November. So
No,
Unconvinced is coming out in November, but it's available in all the places now. I'm amazed. I don't think I've ever seen a book that was available for pre-order so long before. I mean,
so
I think
early, yeah.
they put it up for pre-order something like 8 months before the release, which is
Yeah.
great because apparently the way it works is all the pre-orders count towards the week one sales figure. I think that's how it works. So
Nice. Okay.
so if you know if it stacks up a few, it could make a little bit of an impact. You know, look, it's not going to be it's not the sort of bestseller kind of thing because it's pretty niche, but
Yeah.
it could certainly make a dent in this genre, in this area. And I just think that it's a type of argument that I want to hear more people make. And the reason I say that is so many of the counter apologetics that we commonly hear require you to engage with, is it true that a God exists?
Hmm.
Attack the cosmological argument and attack the argument for objective morals, or attack these old apologetics. Deal with Aquinas, all of this stuff. The apologetics are all around disproving the claims of religion. This is a
Yeah.
slightly different approach, because this argument holds even if religion is true. Even if
Yeah.
Christianity is true, even if Christ did actually live and die and was resurrected and is some kind of deity. I mean, we have zero reason to think that's true, but
If it
for the
were,
if it were, it would still be the case that it's morally unacceptable to condemn someone simply for not being convinced of that.
right.
So this line of argument doesn't make it necessary for you to take down the pillars of somebody else's belief. It's a moral argument. The first line of my book is, this is not a book about whether God exists, because it's not.
Right.
It's not an atheism book. It's a moral argument to say, this is how belief works, and I lay it out. Belief is not a choice. It's not an action that you do, even if our language is set up to pretend it is. We've got
Yeah.
phrases like "I refuse to believe" and "I choose to believe." This is all nonsense. So I make the case: belief is not an action. It's not something that you choose to do. It's something that happens to you. Once we realize that, we make the moral argument, which is old as the hills, to say moral accountability requires agency. You have to have had the opportunity or the freedom to have done something differently. If you don't
Yeah.
have that, there's no moral accountability. It's why we know it's wrong to condemn people for their eye color or their height. You don't have a
Yeah.
choice.
Right.
And so I want to hear more people using this a line of argument to push back against religion, because they so far have not figured out how to respond to this. I've been testing this argument out in the wild now for 10 months,
Yeah.
and I've not heard a cogent response to it from a single believer. Not
Yeah.
not one. Not one's come anywhere close. All they say is either they refuse to accept that belief is not a choice, and they hold on to the
Yeah.
rather naive insistence that it is,
Yeah.
to which I say to them, okay, well, let's prove right now that it's not a choice. I would like you to, my new one, I used to say, believe that I'm an egg and bacon sandwich, but what I now say, after having engineered this for a bit, I think I came up with a good example. Because what used to happen is I would say, okay, believe your parents are dolphins, and they would go, okay, I believe that. And of course, I couldn't argue with that, because if they're saying that, I can't argue it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So
You don't know their interstate, right?
I don't know they're in a state, right? So I can't. So the latest one that I've been trialing, and it does work quite well, is I say, I want you to, if you are holding to the belief that to the idea that belief you can choose what you believe. Believe now that the building you're in is going to collapse in a few minutes. Make yourself genuinely convinced that that's the case. And of course, the beauty of that is anyone who really did think that would leave, and
Right.
they never leave. They just say, "Oh, yes, okay, I believe it," but they're still there.
Yeah.
So it's a powerful demonstration that you don't really believe it; you're just saying it, right?
Right.
So
Right.
they either do that, they insist that belief is a choice, and they just hold on to that for dear life. And I understand why they have to hold on to it, because once that goes, the moral foundation for judging non-believers goes too. So they hold on to it, or they're Calvinists, at which point they say, yes, we agree belief is not a choice. We agree that you can't choose to make we agree with, they'll give me that. And they'll say, but you know what? God decided before who's going to be saved and who's not anyway, and there's nothing you can do about it, which is, to my mind, even worse.
It's even worse.
Morally, it's enormously worse, because it means you can live the
Why
most
make the
ethical.
people who aren't going to go to heaven?
Yeah,
Like, why even do that?
exactly. That would mean God has created billions of people for the express purpose of condemning them to hell forever. Which is, it's not a moral flex. That's not a win.
Right. 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 I don't have super chats yet. I'm not to that point. So but I did, so every now and then I'll throw up a question that comes out of the chat. Sorry. Out of the chat, and Kif is asking and I don't know if this is a rhetorical question, Kip or Kif
Yeah.
or
So the answer to do we choose what we find convincing depends on how we define choose. Do our minds determine it on some level? Yes. Do we have conscious control over that determination? No. So you discover what you find convincing. So if I say it's raining outside and you go and look outside the window and it isn't raining, you can't choose to find that statement convincing.
right.
And similarly, if it is raining, you have no choice but to find the statement convincing. So all beliefs, when we're weighing up propositions, that process is what happens. And it
Yeah.
was quite interesting when I was writing the book. I have a chapter on the neuroscience of belief, and what I discovered, which was really really fascinating, is that the brain essentially evaluates a proposition as to whether you believe it. Behind the scenes, you don't have
Hmm.
access to it. It's kind of black boxed, and it does it in two ways. One is, broadly speaking, brains are really super complex, far too complex for me as a simple person to understand them. But
Yeah.
from what I understand, essentially there's sort of two parallel bits of processing that your brain does. One is, how does it make you feel emotionally? Like our emotional centers, does it tap into your I'm going to die
Right.
systems, right?
Right.
Is it a threat? Is it, how does it make you feel emotionally? That's one, and that's mediated through the limbic system, and the amygdala is involved with that. It's a sort of, think about it as the kind of emotional side, and we are
Right.
far more emotional than rational, by the way. And then the other is the more logical side. It's how easily can I incorporate this statement or this proposition or this proposed belief into things I already believe. So if somebody says
Mm.
they flew down the street on a flying carpet, well, you've got a concept of carpets, and your concept of carpets excludes flying, right? In
Right.
your current world, carpets don't fly. So you struggle to believe that, because their claim of a flying carpet can't be easily integrated with your lifetime of noticing that carpets don't fly. And that's the sort of logical part. So your brain
Yeah.
has these two strands of processing: emotional, how does it make me feel? Am I really resistant to it? Without you even knowing about it, right? And intellectual. And then these two strands are kind of combined, broadly speaking, in the hippocampus. And then the process, the results of that processing is then fed back towards the frontal areas of the brain, where we decide things and make decisions and become aware, and at the higher order sort of executive control stuff. And
Right.
that's when you find out your brain delivers the result like a Eurovision vote. Here is the vote. and
Yeah.
and and that's when you then feel a feeling of, to answer Gibbs' question, a feeling of whether you feel convinced or not. So you don't have access to any of that processing. You just find out about it later, a few milliseconds after it
Yeah.
happens. So
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a part of that whole pattern recognition uh that we're so that's kept us alive, right, for a long time. It's like, oh, right, this
Yeah,
could kill me, this won't. But
yeah.
and then the frontal lobes, reason through it later or make a reason for it sometimes. So I think it's kind of I have to we I was talking with you earlier about my cool daughter. This is her. So, hey Meg.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hey, hi.
So, yeah, so the it is fascinating how quickly our brains can process all of this. And I think when we were talking earlier about maybe if you have low self-esteem, or if you um it's like there's some therapies that work and some that don't, right? And my brain's going faster than my mouth can at the moment. But the point I was trying to say is that I used to tell myself, um, when I had a lower self esteem and I didn't feel good about something, or I was yelling at myself about, oh, you can't keep your house clean or whatever, um, that I realized after talking to some really good friends, yeah, that was probably just not true. What the things that I was saying to myself were not true,
Mm, mm,
and it was just an automatic kind of thing, right? And I know a lot of people do this. Some people don't have inner dialogue, which is fascinating to me, but mine's constantly going, which is probably why I like music, because I can at least put the music on and ignore the words. But anyway, the point is, I would tell myself, I might be lying to myself. So why don't I lie to myself in the positive? Like, I don't believe that I'm a good housekeeper, but if I just keep telling myself that, like, my brain will eventually believe it because my brain's been believing these other lies. So I'll just lie to myself in the positive, and
mm.
eventually it'll catch on and take that. So I think that's been like some of like how to consciously make a difference,
So,
in your
so
brain. But
on that, right? Because some
hmm
people interpret what I'm saying here as either your beliefs are fixed and they can never change, which is obviously nonsense. People change beliefs change all the time, or
right.
that there's nothing you can ever do that might change your beliefs, which is also obviously nonsense. So you can sometimes persuade yourself of something. So let's say, to
hmm
use your example, you currently think that you're not a good housekeeper, you're not good at maintaining your home, and
Right.
you want to change how you feel about yourself with regard to that. So if the question is, can you just choose to believe that you actually are a good housekeeper? The answer would be you can't.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that nothing can happen that would legitimately persuade you that you actually are a good housekeeper. And once that persuasion happens, then your beliefs will flip. And then you will have no choice but to believe you actually are a good housekeeper because
Right.
you've been persuaded that you are. And the activator for that persuasion can be yourself. So
Yeah.
so you can do things. You could, for argument's sake, you could sit in a cave for a month and do nothing but repeat to yourself, I am a good housekeeper. I am a good housekeeper, right? It wouldn't be the most exciting month,
That would be
but
awful.
right, right. But on the upside, your house would stay clean for the entire month, right? But
Yeah, I mean, you're not there to mess it up, right?
right, exactly. But the fact is that in that scenario, it could be said that now you've chosen to change your beliefs, but you haven't. What you've chosen to do is enter a process. You've entered some kind of sequence of activities which may or may not result in your beliefs changing. You don't know until you get there.
Yeah.
And then if they do change, it's because you were persuaded. And at that point, once you become persuaded that actually, you know what? I am a pretty good housekeeper. Well,
Yeah.
once that flips over in your brain, then you no longer have the ability to believe you're not a good housekeeper. So, still
Right.
not a
Right.
choice. It's
Right.
just that the background conditions have changed
Right.
and now a different belief follows.
Right. And I think something with this is that I would say, uh I'm a horrible cow, but then I'd be like, no, I'm a good housekeeper. What would a good housekeeper do? Because I'm a good housekeeper, so what should I do? right?
Mm.
And then I would change my behavior, and then I became a better housekeeper, you see. So it was like, I am a good housekeeper, so what would I do because I'm a good housekeeper? What should, so it made
Right.
it that transition better.
Like a
But I think
feedback loop.
the feedback loop, yeah, it was a
Yeah.
positive feedback loop rather than a negative one. But the other thing about this that we haven't really talked about, but is integral to it, and that is evidence, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, and being presented with new evidence. That's the part of, and then having to make a decision about that and integrate that into that pattern or your perspective or whatever. So as far as like you are, how to change how you think about something, I don't think it can just be you're telling yourself this, you're telling yourself this. You have to have evidence that is different. So that's why, some therapy works. That it's like, well, this, these are the kinds of things that, my husband tells me that I'm this and this and this and this, and then you have a third person going here saying, "Are you that way?" And then,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh, actually no, because I do this and this and this," and there's evidence against it, but you can't, if you can't see that because you've always been told this is what you're like, I guess that's part of it.
Yeah.
So the same thing has to do with beliefs or your religion, right? That this is what you're told, this is what this religion is, this is what these are, this is how this is. And then if you presented with evidence that actually starts that cognitive dissonance, because they can't be two completely opposite things at the same time, and there
Mm.
are in,
Mm.
in at least in Christianity and surely in Islam and others, right? So I think that's that part of the key, uh, and then the choice that you have talked about here and also on your live is choosing to just be open to seeing something
Right.
different, seeing evidence, or seeking out that
Yeah.
evidence. Yeah, and then
That's where
then
the
you have to
choice,
be
that's where the
confronted.
choice lives. And so I have this concept in the book called belief vectors. So in physics, if an object has multiple forces acting on it, say a plane in flight, right?
Hmm.
It has forward thrust from the engines, it's got wind resistance stopping it going forward, it's got lift from the air flowing over the wings, creates lift, it's got gravity pulling it down. So it's got all these forces acting on it. And all of those forces have a resultant vector, which means that they're all kind of, you plug them all into the equation,
Right.
which determines the direction and velocity of the plane, and you kind of get a result at the end. And the way I look at beliefs is it's very similar. So a given moment of belief has a large number of, I call them belief vectors
Yeah,
acting on it. So here's how to think about it.
I
Say
like it.
somebody makes a claim to you in a given moment, and this is why you mentioning evidence made me think of this. So somebody makes a claim, say it's a claim about a miracle that they heard about, or something in the Bible or outside the Bible, it doesn't matter. So you've got the vectors from your birth. You've got things that your genetic inheritance, right, which set the kind of mind you're going to have. Your intelligence, a large amount of intelligence is genetic. You've got all of your sort of genetic inheritance, which is all before you were even born. These things were set. Then you've got the experiences of your early childhood, right? Were you, don't laugh, but were you cuddled as a baby, right?
Right.
That's going to have an effect on your cognition in the world. What kind of childhood did you have? What was your education like? Were you loved at home? Were you nurtured? Were you encouraged to have an inquisitive mind? All of these things are vectors acting on your mind years and years and years later, in the moment when you're considering something. They're
Right.
old, but they're still acting on you right now.
Yeah.
Then you've got the more recent ones, which is like, what kind of things have you been interested in the last few years? What sort of stuff has been taking your attention? What kind of habits do you have around learning and thinking and new things? These are still in the past, but not as in the past as your childhood or your birth or your genetic inheritance. Then
Right.
you've got the more recent ones, like, how are you feeling this week? Right? Are you feeling rested? uh,
Right.
are you in a position to be thinking well? Are you feeling emotional because you're sleep deprived, and that's going to have an impact on your cognition? That's another vector, another force acting on you. And then you've got the person telling you the thing, is it someone you trust? Are they a reliable source, right? Are they
Right.
someone who you have a history of the things they say turning out to be true, or maybe not? Maybe you see them as slightly gullible. Then you've got, what kind of evidence are they actually presenting you with? Is it just I heard, or is it, here is the evidence I saw? Is it written in a, in a journal, peer reviewed thing? So there's evidence to do with the specific source they're offering you. And all of these things all combine in a moment. It's, what is the nature of the actual claim itself? Is it, are they claiming something completely preposterous like a flying carpet, or is it something in the middle area, which is like maybe something very unlikely, like a really super super unlikely coincidence which maybe could have happened but probably didn't happen? Or a story where, maybe they say someone came back from the dead. Well, that might mean they actually, turns out they weren't really dead, it was misdiagnosed, and that happens
Right.
sometimes. Or
Right.
all of these things are all vectors. They're all forces acting in your mind, on your mind, in that one moment when your mind is trying to figure out whether you're going to experience, yes, I believe this, or I'm not sure about this. And
Right.
they all bring to bear, and evidence is a lot of it. So some of them are to do with direct evidence, and some of them are much older. That really helped me to think about um, the sort of the causes behind whether you believe something or not, with quite a lot of clarity. Once I realized that, I thought, oh yeah, there's all of these different things, and they all bring to bear, and you can control some of them, and some of them you have absolutely no control over.
Yeah, and there can be so many of those vectors that that are completely unconscious, that you are completely unaware of.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons that I find your conversations with people so compelling, because it's so calm. And for the most part, sometimes people are really awful, and of course you can't let people be really awful. But for the most part, and I can't wait for the opportunity. I know this. I think I'm just living vicariously sometimes when you go shh 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 shh.
Yeah,
When
that's the
somebody's
thing.
getting really really worked up and their nervous system is quite activated, right? They are just like and interrupting and these kinds of things. But it's actually fascinating to me because it's like, wow, and it immediately calms them. It's almost like mama with a baby, right? It's like shh, and they have that, like their brain kind of takes that automatic reaction. But I think but there's a whole lot of compassion, right, and requesting compassion of others
Mm.
in these conversations that you have with folks. um and, and it's kind of, I also see, I don't know how well you actually are, even you're really great at reading the chat while you're doing your conversations, and some people are a little bit more adamant, right, and that more so than you would be or Sean would be even, sometimes. But I guess is what I'm saying is just it's helpful with that framework to see why people can be so dug in
Yeah,
to their belief, even with being presented with evidence.
because of the vectors. Because the
Exactly.
evidence is only a part of the picture. And my argument to someone, even if I'm framing it nicely, is only a small part of their story. And I do argue in the book, and I must qualify this by saying I regularly fail to live up to this ideal. But I
Right.
do argue in the book that as we are asking for understanding from believers to recognize that we have no choice about being able to believe the things they're asking us to believe, right? This is not rebellion on our part, we're just not able to
Right.
believe them, we're incapable of doing that. So we're asking for some understanding and some compassion, and to be dealt with on that basis. Well, if we're going to be fair, it has to cut the other way too. And
Yeah.
so we
Yeah.
really need to understand that the people we're speaking to, even when they're coming in and telling us that we're going to be burning in hell, or that we're
Yeah.
tools of Satan, or that whatever it is they might be saying, we
Yeah.
really ought to understand and try to deal more compassionately with them, as well. And it's really hard, and I don't always manage to do it. Sometimes people are pretty odious, and there's a particular brand of I will say young male that people that come in. It's always men.
Yes, it
These
is.
guys who come in, and their motivation isn't theological. It's more just social hierarchy. They just want to come in and dominate
Win. They
another.
want to win.
They
Yeah.
just want to win. Yeah. And so they come in with a very combative tone, and we've all seen them before. And it's hard to remain it's hard to remain understanding and compassionate towards someone like that, because their whole orientation is so aggressive. You
Yes.
kind of have to meet them where they are, otherwise it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So those people need to be dealt with in a particular type of way. But
Right.
I always try to see the person I'm speaking to as a human being with a story and their own long list of vectors and things that have brought them to that moment. And I could have been that person. Any one of us, given the
Mm-hmm.
same priors, would be probably doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And as I said, I don't always manage to live up to that ideal, but I try. I do try.
Yeah. Yeah. The sometimes, yeah, they're the Phil Bros. Yeah, and it's hard, like the perspective that I was discussing. It is still difficult for me to go, for some reason, this person thinks that this is the way they can keep themselves from dying. Like like to come in as the aggressor, and to, like, the goal is to win, and to be right, not necessarily to actually have a conversation or learn anything, or teach anything. It's just yeah. And it is very, that is probably the hardest for me to have, because it's triggering to me, right?
Yeah.
And probably because I want to be right.
Well, we do. We do. We
We
do want to be.
do.
We do want to be right. I mean, let's not kid here, right? We're all
Yeah.
human beings, and especially when you feel strongly about stuff, especially when you've done the hard work of processing this stuff, and you've felt the
Yeah.
pain, and you've, like, these are mountains you have climbed. And so for someone to come along and just delegitimize the mountains you've climbed is offensive and hard to deal with. And I absolutely understand why you would feel that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get it. I do get it. And we can't all sort of meet that ideal all the time of being
Right.
maximally understanding of somebody's history and
Yeah.
all the rest of it.
We're human too. Come on.
Well, I mean, yeah, sometimes you just
Yeah.
have to go, I mean, sometimes I'll just say to someone, grow up.
Bugger
Just grow
off.
up. Just grow up. You're talking about talking donkeys. Grow up.
Yeah.
This is we're in the 21st century. Like,
Yeah.
I'll say, like, this is the age of quantum computers and genomic sequencing, and you're talking about burning bushes and sticks turning into snakes. Grow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thought here in the chat, a little bit about our compassion part. You'll get to that, but Kinetic is saying it's genetics interacting with your environment, both of which are outside your control. Therefore, there is no free will. I'm not sure I would say that. And if you want to know more about ways to think about free will, please go back and watch my live with Leo Filius. I think it's fascinating the way he talks about free will, because we may not have free will, but we kind of act like it, and so might as well.
And we feel like it.
We feel like it,
So,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
whether we actually have it or not, we experience life in exactly the same way as if we really did.
Yeah.
So I mean, I remember reading Sam Harris's short book on free will and finding it completely convincing. I could not come up with an argument against it, and I still can't. I think he makes a really, really compelling argument. And he doesn't just say we probably don't have free will. He says the entire concept doesn't make any sense if you just know anything about how brains work, because the logic here is fairly unassailable. You can't decide what the next thing you're going to choose is, because if you did, that process of decision would itself be you can't decide the next thing you're going to think, because the process of making that decision would itself be a thought. And did you decide
Right.
to have that thought, right? And so
Right.
it's thoughts you didn't decide to have all the way down. And there are lots of reasons to think that what he says is true, but as you just said, we do have the subjective experience of feeling like we have free will. So I'm prepared to kind of
Yeah.
engage on the basis of even assuming that we do. Lots of people mistake my position on belief as as a reflection of not having free will. They say, well, do you think we just don't have any free will to do anything? Or that isn't what I'm saying. I'm not advocating for hard determinism. Let's imagine, again, another thought experiment. Let's imagine determinism is false and free will is true. It would still be the case you don't choose your beliefs, because you can still
Right.
only believe something if you're persuaded by it. If you're not persuaded by it, you ain't believing it. And so it's interesting because I get people coming in from the religious side arguing that yes, you do choose your beliefs because they need to, because otherwise the moral accountability evaporates. And
Yeah.
then I get people coming in from the other side saying, not only do you not choose your beliefs, you don't choose anything. Every decision you've ever made is just the laws of physics playing out in in a deterministic way on the gray slush between your ears, and every achievement in your life is not really yours to claim. Every thought you've ever thought, every desire you've ever had, everything that you've ever done and will do is just you're just like a pinball in the machine that's just obeying the Newtonian laws, and you're going to end up where the ball's going to end up, and that's it. And they accuse me of not going far enough, right? They're saying that my
Yeah.
claim that we don't choose our beliefs is like a watered down version of what they see as being the right position, which is everything is deterministic.
Mm.
And if you're honest about it, you don't choose anything. And to that, I say, they may be right. They may well be right. But if my starting point, if my opening gambit, if my stall that I set out was everything in your life is not actually you, and all the things that you think are your own choices aren't your choices, and all the things that you think are your own accomplishments are the mere repercussions of chemistry playing out between your ears,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to win people over to this way of thinking about
Right.
belief in a better way, because the shutters come down, right?
Yeah.
If your starting point is you don't have free will, people tune out at that point and don't really want to have the conversation. So I
Right.
prefer to kind of strategically, if you like, take a more nuanced position and say, I don't know if we have free will or not. For the sake of the argument, let's assume we do. It's
Yeah.
still the case that you don't choose your beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Tommy always has the funny thing to say. I love the quote. Of course I believe in free will. I have no choice.
Yeah,
But what you're talking about, it's like, okay, I think one of the reasons we feel like we have free will, even if there's, a lot of deterministic things happening in our brains, is that we aren't conscious of so much of that, right? We don't know every vector. We're not
exactly.
aware of all of the vectors. So we,
Yeah.
like, what will I have for dinner tonight? Was that deterministic? I mean, I don't know, you know. So it's just like, yeah, I could be a brain in a vat, but it doesn't feel like it, so I'm just gonna act like I'm not. Same, I feel the same way, a little bit
If you
about
knew
free
you
will.
were,
So
if you knew you were a brain in a vat, you still got to have breakfast tomorrow morning.
yeah,
If you have breakfast, right? You still got to do the things. You still wouldn't want to suffer the experiences, even if they were artificial. The sensation of the pain of hunger or
yeah,
loneliness or whatever it might be, right? We
yeah,
still just have to do what we can to avoid suffering.
yeah,
It's all an illusion, right? If I found out today that the entire universe is a simulation running on a system somewhere, well, okay, but I would still need to do the things, right? I still brush my teeth.
yeah,
Still, that's it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm persuaded by this argument through no free will of my own. But
Yeah,
okay, so this is why I like to talk about free will, and I like to talk about physics and free will, because there's a lot of people talking about quantum physics and free will, and free will and everything, because if everything is deterministic, then you know it's almost as if we feel like we just, well, why just, it's nihilism in a way, right? It's like, well, what does anything matter? Why why should I do anything? And it, so that kind of like goes against our, I think, very, very strong innate, survival kind of thing. Where, yeah. So and but that's the, I think that was an interesting way, I think that Leo put it was, we act like we have free will, so like let's just say we have free will. Because
Exactly. And
yeah, because
Gordon just
it's
nailed it in the chat now. Even if I don't have free will, it feels like we do. And that's
mm-hmm,
exactly the point. So it doesn't really matter in a way whether we do or we don't. It feels like we have it. So our experience of living is exactly the same as it would be if we really did have it. So let's just
yeah,
live life almost as if we do, understanding that maybe we do, maybe we don't, who knows. We feel like we do, so that's why we infer it in each other. Like
yeah,
if someone wrongs you, if someone hurts you, you don't hurt any less because of the potential that actually their actions were just the inevitable consequences of
true,
physics and chemistry. your
right,
your, your feelings are still hurt. That,
yeah, yeah,
you know, considering what the substrate of the behavior is doesn't change the effect it has on you. And I think that's fine. That's what it is to be human.
yeah,
We live in a world where our interactions with each other um, have a huge effect on us, and that's where to me where ethics comes from, is like thinking about how we ought to be with each other.
mm-hmm,
It's why I think the ludicrous religious claim that unless you believe in some sort of cosmic policeman, there's no basis for saying anything's right or wrong. I think it's completely ludicrous
it
because
doesn't make any sense,
it completely ignores the fact that our actions have effects on other conscious minds,
right,
and and if you genuinely don't care about the suffering of other conscious minds, well then fine, but then you're not a person I want to talk to about ethics.
yeah,
All you need to do is grant that other conscious minds are going to be impacted by your actions, and you've got a basis for describing how you think we ought to behave to each other to try and minimize the suffering of others.
yeah,
So
yeah, um yeah. So as a part also of this free will argument, yes, I do really like Sapolsky. However, like Meg said, it's a bit depressing in talking about the free will. So again, I don't, and just, I just am not, I mean, I just, strong determinism, or however you want to phrase it, just doesn't, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me, because even in our natural world, like there is random, there's randomness, right? And so I just feel like, yeah,
someone might say that randomness doesn't necessarily mean that things aren't deterministic. It just could be that it's determined that the sequence is random, right? So random means that you can't figure out the pattern. It's not predictable. It's, it could still be
right,
deterministic. I'm not saying that I think it is. I don't know. I'm genuinely like pretty agnostic about this stuff.
yeah,
Um, but I think, it all comes back to um, human experience. And the question I get asked more than anything, and I'll tie it back to what we're talking about here. It's going to sound like a pivot, but it isn't. Is, if you don't believe, why do you talk about this stuff? I, almost a day,
aha,
almost a day doesn't go by that someone doesn't come in as if they're the first person to ever think of asking me that question. If you don't believe, why do you spend all day talking about religion? And the answer is because the behavior of humans affects other humans, and the things we say and the ideas we propagate have an impact on other humans and on other people, on animals, on other sentient life. And unless you don't care about that, then you should take an interest in what people are saying and thinking and organizing their lives around, and telling their children and advocating be taught in schools, and
and making
legislating.
laws,
I was about to say legislating
yeah,
in governments and congresses. And unless you're completely disinterested in everything to do with anything about the world, this stuff is important.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it does come down to an understanding of how things impact others, and that's why I don't really care whether things are deterministic or not, because all I care about really is how we affect each other, how people are hurt and damaged by ideas, and how we can mitigate that, and how we can push back against damaging ideas. And we have done it. We managed to, broadly speaking, get rid of quite a few bad ideas. I mean, there's still lots of work to do, but
Yeah.
slavery, we managed to stop that.
Right.
There was a time when women couldn't own property and they couldn't vote. We managed to stop that. The world is still, there's a lot of racism in many places, but we've made some progress in that direction. There's a lot more to make. But I look at, like, even culturally, there were things that were completely permissible. You look at back at like 1980s comedy with sort of, in the UK, there was a lot of kind of casual racism in
Oh,
1980s comedy, which
yeah.
just like would never be accepted now. So I see that as progress, right? That
Yeah.
we are making progress, and that's what spurs me on to say, well, another way we make progress is by being willing to speak out against pernicious, damaging, obviously false ideas that hurt people. And I see it as a moral duty to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's the other thing that gets interesting in your conversations when it does get into morality and God's morality, and the that God, you know anything that God does is okay,
Yeah.
but just trying to get people to actually see the stories and say these people are hurt, and God said do this, hurt these people, this, like, what, how is that good, how is that? So those, can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about some of those conversations and
Yeah.
how
So
that?
it's an arc that happens all the time. Almost in every live stream, there will be one conversation where someone comes in declaring God to be good. And what they're doing there is, I had a real moment of clarity about this, funnily enough, last week. They declared God to be good, and I show them an instance from scripture where God did something, or either commanded something or did something that no reasonable person would ever say is good. And an example would be commanding the slaughter of children, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Mm-hmm.
in First Samuel, in other places,
Right.
explicitly the children too, right? So it's like, go
Right.
and kill the Amalekites and make sure that you take every last one out, the infants and the sucklings, the children, the babies, the cattle, all of it.
Yeah.
And I will offer it to a person as an example of, look, here's something which is obviously not good. And then what they do is they say, there's an interesting inversion that happens, is they say, well, God is good. That's their starting point. God is good. Therefore, this action must have been good because I've defined God as good, right?
Yeah.
Which is ludicrous. And the moment of clarity I had, it was actually last week, was I suddenly realized that when you do that, you're not using good as a descriptive term. You're just using it as a label. So you're just saying, I'm going to take the word good, I'm going to scrape it out and empty it of any real moral meaning that we would normally assign to the word, right? If
Mm-hmm.
somebody calls someone good, you might associate that with very specific qualities like kindness or gentleness or being considerate or being selfless, or all of these things we
Right.
could use as ways to build up our understanding of what the concept in that instance means of good. They're not doing that. They get rid of all of those things and they just use the word as a label rather than a descriptor, and they apply it to God. And then because they've applied it to God, definitionally, anything God does must now be good because God is good. We've
Right.
labeled him good. And so all the horrendous atrocities that he does and commits must also be good. And it will never stop fascinating me to have these conversations. I mean, I have them time and time and time again. And it's like watching the same kind of car crash over and over again
It's
as
like Groundhog
someone.
Day, the
It
movie.
is. It
Yeah.
is like Groundhog Day, and I use the same examples from scripture quite often. And some people say to me, "Why do you always use those ones? There are other ones." And the answer is, I just use the worst ones. Like I just reach for the worst ones, and sometimes I think I could pick a less bad one for the sake of changing it up a bit, because the Bible is full of instances where God
Yeah.
does or commands
Yeah.
horrific things, and some of them aren't as bad as others. And I sometimes think, should I choose a less bad one just because I used the really bad ones in a previous conversation? And I think, no, I don't think I should. I can't bring myself to not make the point as forcefully as I can, right? So I
Right.
will go to God commanding, determining that David's wives are going to be sexually assaulted because of his infidelity,
Right.
or other instances where commanding the killing of children and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't help it. And watching these people go, yeah, it was good. And then I'll sometimes ask them, this is a bit mean, but I'll say, okay, well, if you had been one of the Israelite soldiers marching off to slaughter the Amalekites in what was essentially a revenge attack for something that had allegedly happened 400 years previous
400.
to this,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So none of the people who did the original attack were here, but you're going to go and, more collective punishment, courtesy of Yahweh, right? But I say, if you had been one of those Israelite soldiers, and would you have participated? And of course, they will say, well, yes, I
God
would.
said to do it.
God said to do it, you got to do it, right? And I get a little bit mean here. So I say, well, imagine you walk into the room then, and there in front of you is the mother nursing her baby. And baby is maybe a couple of months old, and the mother is nursing the baby. She's terrified. The baby is holding on to the mother. Which one do you kill first? I will literally ask them that. And some of them answer. Some of them are evasive at that point. They say, I'm not going to answer that. But some of them, we will literally get into a serious, non-ironic discussion about whether it would be right to, kill the child first and then the mother, or the mother first and then it's absolutely horrific. And then I'll take a moment to say, listen to yourself. Just listen to what you're saying. You are on the
Yeah.
internet now in front of 800 people defending weaponized sexual assault, or defending the murder of children, or whatever it might be. Listen, look
Yeah.
at what your faith has done to you. Your insistence to define God as good at the beginning, and then just, retroactively label all the atrocities as good by decree,
Right.
it breaks you as a person. In every other context,
Yeah.
we don't do that. We look at somebody's actions, and based on their actions, we decide if they're good or not. It's
Yeah.
such a weird inversion, isn't it?
It is. It is. And they often go, to, well, I mean, these people were committing infanticide, like sacrificing, but these people were awful. They were, committing idolatry. And it's like, you're gonna go and kill all the babies because they were killing all the babies? I mean, that doesn't make sense, right? And
Right. Yeah.
also, like, is it ever okay? Like the David's wives example, like, when is it okay? When is it ever okay to use rape as a punishment for anything? For, if it's you or your spouse, like, yeah. Every now and then, I really wish you had asked because sometimes I think, yeah, I've heard you ask the guys, like, is it okay if if you do something wrong for your wife to be
I should
raped,
say for
right?
you to be.
For you to be, yeah, I would really
Yeah.
like for you to say
Yeah.
that.
I think I have been there. I think I have.
Oh,
I
have
need
you? I
to do
haven't
that more
heard it yet.
often. Like if you imagine your wife cheated on you, and as retribution for that, you get sexually assaulted. I
Yeah,
think I need to do that more.
yeah,
It is weird, and you just you just watch people. I mean, it's such a cliche to talk about pretzels, but you just watch people twist themselves into all sorts of previously
yeah.
unimagined baked goods in these situations.
Yes, the
It's
challah
so
bread, right? It's a, a big
they
knot.
are in all sorts of knots, and it is fascinating. I must admit to a certain degree of Schadenfreude of watching it happen, because I mean, maybe I'm just a bit mischievous, but it is remarkable to watch it unfold
Yeah.
so
It's stunning
predictably
though. I
every
mean,
time.
it's like it's just believable or whatever. I'm sitting there in disbelief, with some of the explanations. Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah,
like, listen to yourself. And
yeah,
then
it's horrific.
and there's not a click. There's not. something there, you know, and you're like, you're having a conversation with somebody up to this point, and they seem like an empathetic kind of guy, right? They seem like a, you know, perfectly normal type of person, and then they're like, oh
Right.
yeah, well then I'll, yeah, well then I would kill the baby. I'm like, what? Where did this go?
Yeah.
How? You
It's
know, it's
mad, isn't
like
it?
it's not okay to do that now in war, right? It's just
Yeah.
like,
This is the guy who you could have been chatting with at the bus stop, or standing at the school gates waiting to collect your kid with, or they're just
yeah,
normal people. They're just normal everyday people. And it
yeah,
just says something about the power of religion. To It doesn't make people bad, but it makes people willing to justify bad things and willing to um, recontextualize and accept horrific things.
hmm,
And the Weinberg quote, right? There will always be good people doing good things and bad people doing bad things. But to get good people to do or accept bad things, you need religion. And I think I don't know if it's universally true, but it's certainly operational here
it makes you
because
think. Yeah, yeah.
it makes you think. Yeah.
I remember when we talk about this, I have a flashback of having a conversation with one of my friends in college, and he grew up Muslim, and I think he was curious, you know, because you know he's surrounded by Christianity in our college and everything, and so I think he went to church, you know, with our friend group, and later talking to me about it, and he's like, I don't, you you eat the body of Christ. That does like,
It's not great, is it?
yeah, yeah. And I was like, well, yeah, it's just like to participate in the same ritual, you know, and it's like, but you're eating the body, you know, like it couldn't, and I didn't, it wasn't enough to actually make me go, you know, well, it's not
Yeah.
really, you know, it's metaphorical. That's how I think I'm sure I explained it. But then that was before I became Catholic for a few minutes. So
Wow.
so
Yeah.
yeah, but it is when you think of some of these things, like somebody who's
It's wild.
never encountered it, right? Rather than growing up with it, it's very
Yeah, I
different.
often think about that. Like if the aliens arrived on planet Earth and they were presented with this, they just think we were all nuts. Well, they
Yeah,
like, I've got this image in my head of the aliens backing slowly out of the room and going, let's go somewhere else, guys. These people are insane." Just getting back in
right.
their spaceship and going somewhere else. Because yeah, it's crazy. And to me, this is a perfect example of, imagine if Christianity, let's just take Christianity, we could talk about another religion, but Christianity, imagine if it wasn't so established and widespread. And we know, I mean, you only need to learn a little bit of history to understand how easily it could have not have been, right? It was just
Right.
an accident and a question of political expedience for Constantine to convert, and then it could easily have gone a different way. If Christianity was not so well established now, and someone came to you and made these claims, or a small group of people, let's imagine there was a group, like a little cult sprang up of 50 or 100 or 200 people who were claiming that, there was a man in first century Palestine who actually created the entire universe. And he was also his own father who had impregnated his own mother, as a sacrifice to make to himself for his own rules. And it was all to do with a piece of fruit that had been eaten in a garden a couple of years before because of a talking snake. You would just think this person was completely admissible into the nearest psych ward. There's no question,
Yeah.
right? This would just be considered, this is fully on the crazy train. But it's only because of sheer happenstance of history that this nonsense has become widely adopted to the point that it achieved political strength and financial strength and institutional strength, that it's just like blended into the background now. And
Yeah.
we've all become sort of numb to the how completely crazy it is. I nearly
Yeah, well, you
swore, but
wanted
it's
to
like,
say batshit crazy,
I
didn't you?
really,
That's you
really
really
wanted
wanted to
to.
say that.
I really did want to. Yeah. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's absolute twaddle. It's complete
Twaddle.
nonsense. It's just
It just makes
completely
me think of
nonsense.
like Ganesh, right? When I she is it Shiva comes home. Is that his dad? Anyway, accidentally kills his own son because he hadn't met him yet by cutting off his head, and then it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, but you need a head, so here's an elephant head, right? So like that sounds like really really wild, right? But it's like that level,
No
it
more
is that same
than
level of
yeah,
kind of whoa,
yeah,
um
yeah.
yeah,
And
because of the
people laugh at
indoctrination. Yeah,
Scientologists because they're talking about Xenu and galaxies and stuff like that.
yeah,
It's all on the same level.
yeah, yeah. But it doesn't seem that way when you grow up in it. It just,
Yeah,
for the most part, like every now and then it'll be like, oh, it's kind of, why are we? Yeah, I mean, and then it's like, push that down because I'm part of the group, right? And yeah, there's a lot of factors, a lot of
for
vectors,
sure. A
yeah,
lot of vectors.
interacting with this. So,
Yeah.
um, I think this is a good place to move on, to stop. But I just want to keep talking for like your 8 hour streams. I think we could.
Well, we'll do it
But
again. This
oh,
is I've
will
really
you?
enjoyed
Oh, that
this.
would be lovely. Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate
for
that. That
sure.
would be great. I really enjoyed it, and especially when your book comes out, we get to read it and we can talk about that as well. But November,
Thank you.
I can't wait that long.
November.
You'll have to come back before then. But yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, yeah. Again, I really appreciate your time and
Of
the wonderful
course.
talk. And everybody, please go and follow John. John Cohen Official is your YouTube handle, and is that also your name on TikTok as well?
I
I
don't think it is. No, the official
Yeah.
one isn't on TikTok. But if
What
you
is
just
your
put,
website? That's what I want to send people to as well, to see your book and everything.
oh, thank you. Yeah, it's just unconvincedbook.com.
Okay, that's
So
what I thought.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you. And so yeah, amazingly, the book is everywhere. I was amazed to watch it roll out when it did. So it's all the places, Barnes and Noble and Amazon and all the
Yeah.
things. So if anyone is interested, that would be a super help. Because if
Yeah.
it can make a bit of an impact when it first comes out, I think it could be. I really genuinely think it could be a good thing for the cause of counter apologetics. I have heard people talking about this before, but it's kind of been a detail in a broader conversation. So I
Yeah.
remember, I used to watch a lot of AXP and the Line and that stuff. I mean, I still love those guys, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's brilliant what they do. But sometimes it would come up in the midst of a conversation, and someone would say something belief, and they'd say, well, but you can't just choose to believe it and then move on, as if
Yeah.
they hadn't just named the biggest thing in the whole conversation. And I just felt like it's not getting enough attention.
Yeah.
This is a massive, like, this is the Death Star. Right? This argument, they have nothing, they cannot counter this. So I want more people to be using this, and it's also a really good way of people, a really good way of thinking about belief for people who are struggling with the shame of not having it. So it's a
Yeah.
really, it's a powerful means to feeling legitimized in your non-belief and realizing not a bad thing you did. It's not a moral failure. It's not
Right.
something you did wrong. It's just your mind doing what human minds do. And
Yes.
that's a kind of normalizing, healing thing for people who need it as well.
Truly, truly. I do. I think it again, there's so much compassion, and then as a result, availability for healing because of the work that you're doing. And I mean, I know the book will really kickstart that, but just what you do on a weekly basis, which is when you have these talks. What is your you have a typical schedule, don't you?
Yeah. So I stream on Thursday nights and Saturday nights. I basically do through the night from my point of view. I start around 10 or 10:30 p.m., which is 5 or 5:30 p.m. your time.
Hmm.
And I basically go through the night. And then on Tuesdays, which I will be doing tomorrow as well, I do like a day stream where I start earlier. Um, I have recently been starting around midday my time, which is like 7 a.m. your time, but I'm going to start a bit later tomorrow, 2 or 3, and then go through a bit later. So yeah, I do Tuesdays during the day, and then Thursdays and Saturdays in the evening. And that means that I can speak to the kind of most of the audience is in the US, but I have some people who are in other time zones who just can't do the crazy late night stuff
Yeah.
that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So please go and listen if you haven't. It's quite a quite an experience, and it's actually, for those who have walked away from their from faith, it's very helpful. So let's see. Meg has a question. When you come back, I want to know how you. Aha! Yes, this is my musician daughter I was talking about. So yes, maybe we can go further
Sure.
back in your history a little bit, maybe. So
Pleased to talk about that. Yeah, for
okay,
sure.
great, great. That's awesome. So I know. Well, I know, Antler. I you can hear Solly. He wants to go
Oh,
outside, and I usually have a time on here somewhere that I have Solly Cam, but the time is different for him here, and so he's like been up and around like this whole time, wanting to go outside. He has somebody downstairs who can take him outside, but he still, I guess, wants me to do that. But so we'll go take care of the puppy.
well,
But I have
thanks.
no Solly Cam today. Sorry.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was a really enjoyable conversation. I could talk about this stuff all day long, and I just, I feel so passionately about it. And so any opportunity to speak about this stuff is just a treat for me. And you've been a
Good.
joy to speak to. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so hopefully, definitely, we'd love to have you back. And I also put the word out to Sean that hopefully he'll be able to come by and visit as well. So I know he's got a different experience, but you guys have a really good rapport going on
Sean
and
is
talk
awesome.
over things. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
really
I'm
fascinating.
I am Sean's biggest fan.
Yeah,
There's a reason why
he
I
is
asked him
brilliant.
to come and co-host with me. He's a ferocious intellect, but more than that, he's just a really, really nice, kind,
Yes,
decent human being with just integrity just flows out of every pore. So yeah, he was the perfect match for me. And the way I met Sean, by the way, is he was a guest on the show. He called in one day
mm,
to the show in the very early days when it was TikTok only, and he said, your views about belief, I've been saying this for years. Amazing to find someone else saying this stuff, and we just found that we were like aligned on absolutely everything. So
that's
it was a
great.
no-brainer for me to ask him to come
Yeah,
on. So
that's
yeah,
excellent. That's
you should
excellent.
definitely get him on. He's brilliant.
Okay, I will for sure.
Good
Alrighty.
stuff. All right.
Everybody, thank you so much for being here. I'm just so happy that you were able to come and visit. So, and thanks for coming on Monday night. I know it's different, but it's because you usually have a Tuesday show, and I'm getting ready to go to Europe, so I'm trying to get myself together. So I really appreciate you coming, and I appreciate everybody being here on a Monday. So. You guys take care, and I will see you next week. Maybe we'll see from Spain. Maybe we'll see. Y'all take care. Bye.